right, guys, what's going on? We've got a very special bonus episode of the Talkin TV podcast tonight. Man, Chris, we've been racking them up recently. We've got Zaid Ek of Kim's Convenience fame here to join us tonight. Of course, myself, I'm Dom, that's Chris, but you guys know who we are. So, people, give a warm round of applause to Zaid Ek. Thank you so much for coming on, dude. This is awesome.
What's up, boys?
Not much. Dude, I just wanted to tell you right off the bat, I don't quite think you just comprehend just how much you have made this guy's dream, because I just wanted to, before we even get into the interview and any questions, I just wanted to make you aware this kid has not shut the fuck up about this show since I got out of school a year and a half ago through season 4. I remember we were sitting down. It was like one of our first hangs right after I got home from school, and he was like, and I was asking him what he was watching, and he was like, man, I found this cool little sitcom on Netflix. It's called Kim's Convenience. It's a Canadian show, and it's awesome. And I'm like, cool, I never heard of it. And I proceeded to not watch it, and then he only kept talking about it more and more and more as time went on. So I'm going to hand it to Chris because he's going to be handling a majority of that, but I just wanted to make you aware of that before we got into it.
Let's go. Love to
hear
man.
I love this show. You know, I'm just gonna say it. Like, I am coming at this as not only a interviewer, but as a fan. And I hope that makes for an interesting conversation, because I consider myself a bit of a sitcomaholic. I've watched good ones, I've watched bad ones, and I've watched some really bad ones. Yeah, exactly. But I watch a bunch of stuff, and so, but it's rare that I watch a show a second time, a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time. When this new season fully drops on Netflix, I'm gonna rewatch it all up until it comes out. You know, again, I'm gonna like sort of prepare when we get that official US launch date, because obviously we don't have the luxury of, you know, CBC Gem, which I'm so jealous that everyone has that up there. But so I absolutely love this show. And yeah, like Dom said, I've watched Lost and I've watched The Office many, many times, and that's because those are like truly special shows to me. And to further let you know, I'm a musician first and foremost by trade, and film and TV has become a huge passion of mine. Meeting Dom, going to film school with him, of course, has grown that love. But, you know, there are albums I've binged, but there's not many TV shows I've watched as much as Kim's. So I'm very excited to talk to you here today. You know, Omar is a great character. We've been seeing a lot more of him throughout the course of the seasons as time goes on, and I think rightfully so. But before we jump into all the Kim stuff, I think we kind of set the stage here. But I want to know about you first and foremost. Like, that's why we got you here for an hour, because I've seen you do some interviews. They're always short, they're always quick, and I enjoy them. But like, who is, you know, Zaid? What got you into acting? You know, what's your story, man? Take us back, and please spare no expense. You know, we have a lot of time here, so.
Yeah. Okay. My parents are they're professors. They're cinema professors. So growing up, I just was always like watching all these movies, and a lot of the time it was kind of inappropriate actually for my age, but it was great because I got to watch like all kinds of things, and I got to really educate myself in kind of the history of Hollywood and things like that, especially with my dad, who's like the big like old age, like golden age Hollywood fan, always watching TCM. And so for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be an actor. Obviously I had like other things like, you know, that popped into my head, like as kids do, but acting was always like this constant thing. And so, but I never took it really seriously until like middle school. I went to an arts high school, you know, did my 6 years of middle school, high school in theater. Then I went to university for theater, for acting. And, you know, I always had this, like, I was always convinced that like I am an actor. There's like nothing else I can do. And then, so I went to Ryerson University in Toronto, graduated with a BFA in acting. Before my actual graduation day, like a couple months before, I got an agent, and then one of my first auditions was Kim's Convenience. And actually, when I auditioned, I was so green. Like I did my audition, and I came home, and I had like a mini existential crisis where I was like, I thought I did pretty shitty on the audition, because I thought, man, like this is, you know, I always prepare something in my head, and then I get to the audition and it doesn't come out that well. But thankfully, our casting director is unreal, because she gave me a note. She was like, you know what? Do this, and that, and it completely changed the audition. And then, you know, I got the call, I got the part, and I actually shot my first day like a week before my actual graduation ceremony. And it's been, you know, it's been my job ever since. Going on, this is my third. I'm almost done 3 years professionally in the biz, as they say. And yeah, Kim's is my main gig. Done a little. I'm fluent in French. French is actually my first language, so I've done a little theater in French. Done a little some short films in French and things like that. Small parts here and there in English, but it's really been Kim's so far.
Nice, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, so what's it called? Yeah, that's crazy only because like obviously like kind of that's the kind of whole joke about just American school in general is most people they get out of school and they're always complaining about the fact that there doesn't seem to be any jobs, but you managed to roll right into this right out of school. So that's impressive already off the bat to say the least. So like I mean, I guess just after that just like kind of walk us through, for lack of a better word, like walk us through the process. Like what's your day like when you like from when you wake up into the morning to when you get to set to when you lead the set, like kind of just walk us through that whole process.
Yeah, for sure. Now, like we as we were talking before the show, I just wrapped my third season, so now it's a little bit different now that I'm a little more established. It used to be I had to wake up like mad early, like I don't know, 5 a.m, and trek to the studio. Right now they pick me up, so that's kind of nice. So basically, they pick me up around like 6 a.m, head to studio around 6:30, grab some quick breakfast. Put my clothes on, my costume, get to hair and makeup, and then sit around a little bit, get to set, rehearse the first scene. That's usually around 7:30 in the morning. And then it's a lot of stops and starts, like we're on set briefly. We do like, depending on the director, 5 to 10 takes of a certain setup, go back, snack a little, almost 11 a.m. at that point, go back, do some more setups. Then it's lunchtime around 1. And then do some more, plow through, and usually our day ends around, I want to say 5. And then they drive me home, and then I get to enjoy my night. So it's a pretty sweet deal, I gotta say. It's a lot of sitting around, but when you're on set and actually doing the thing, it goes by really fast.
Sounds about like how most acting gigs go. Is that,
Yeah.
That's the one thing that nobody ever that most people don't know about. Is that like if they get on a set? Only because I've been on a couple of sets. I was a background extra for a couple of local productions here, and I'm like, man, there sure is a lot of waiting around. This is not the part that I was told about.
Yeah, they tell you about that. They make it sound super exciting and stuff, but it's actually, I want to say it's like 60% sitting around.
Yep.
And then depending, obviously, like the main guys, like they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I'm a little luckier in a sense as of now, where like I'm not like that involved in too many scenes, so I'm not like dying to learn my lines for the next day. Like these guys are like on set for like not 60 straight days, but they shoot like 60 days. I shoot like 10, So
wow.
I'm not like, I don't have to learn like a billion lines like they do. But it's definitely like, yeah, it's definitely work. Like once you get to a certain level, I'm still starting out, and I really still feel like the rookie, even though I'm like, now I've got 3 seasons under my belt, I do still feel like a rookie in there. And I'm also like the youngest most of the time. So that's another thing.
Okay. How old are you by any chance? I feel like we may have graduated high school the same year. Is the only reason I ask.
I'm gonna turn 25 in June.
Oh, okay. You're
Wow.
2 years younger than me then. Damn.
Wow. So you're
Congrats
actually
on
right,
that, man.
Yeah, you're actually right above me. I'm gonna be 24 in August.
Let's go.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So with that being said, like, what advice do you have for like people our age, man, who want to break into the biz and who want to just like see any modicum of success, let alone have hopes to be on a show that's blowing up like Kim's, like give us something that you think you could have used in like sort of your darkest hour where you thought maybe this isn't going to happen for yourself.
So there's many different paths. I followed like a more, I don't want to say traditional, but I went to university for theater to get a theater degree because I still do believe that the best actors are theater-based actors because that's where you get the most in-depth training. So I forget who said that. There's like a couple famous actors that have said that, where they say like, do you want to be an actor? Do you want to be a star? Or like, do you want to be an actor? Do you want to work? If you want to work, I'd say you got to take some classes, and you can start as soon as like high school. You got to get some on-camera like film classes to learn and to meet people, and those are the people that are going to be your contacts that you're going to get like through classes. You can get an agent, and then through the agent you can get like the auditions for shows such as Kim's. But if you want to learn how to act like truly act, then for sure get some training, get to go to a school or go to a university or whatever and do that. I think training is the most important thing, because once you have the tools, then you know, like if you're not succeeding right away, it's kind of out of your control, right? You like put your chances on your side and you do the work, and then you hope that then it works out, because like the business has like so many, this industry has so many like intangibles, and it's not always based on your talent. It's really like very much appearance based and right place, right time. And I'm like so lucky that I got to book this show right out of school, and that it is such a big show, because like I could have been sitting on my ass for the last 3 years not booking anything or booking small parts, but it happened to be that in whatever May 2018 they were looking for a Middle Eastern actor about my age for this show, and boom, I got it.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, walk us through the process of, like, I mean, like I said, you've been on the show like 3 years now, even though you weren't one of the initial players, right? You came on in season 2, right?
Season 3.
Season 3. Okay, so yeah. So you were kind of a late to the game kind of a player, but
Yeah.
but like walk us through like the gig, like usually like when do you receive the scripts? Do you receive the whole scripts usually? Like walk us through kind of like that process of like prepping for the character. Like walk us like before you actually get to the set usually for work.
Yeah, they send us the main cast. I think they get most of the scripts that are ready, so they'll get a bunch of scripts in advance, and they'll know in advance. Guys like me that are recurring will get the scripts that we're actually involved in as they're ready. So this season, because of COVID, it was a little different. We did some like Zoom read-throughs in June, and we were thinking about shooting in end of August, September. We actually ended up starting in September, if I recall correctly. So usually it's about like maybe like a few weeks before I'll get the script, and then I'll get updates. They're color coded, which I didn't know at first. So they'll get like the like green script, and then a couple weeks later I'll get the blue version of the script or whatever. So I'll get the full script. Usually I don't get the full script. Like if I wouldn't get the full script if I was auditioning. But now that I'm on the show, yeah, they do send me the full script. And then yeah, they'll like give me some dates. They'll give me like an idea of like the kind of dates they'll need me for a few weeks ahead of time, and then about like a week and a half before I want to say they'll like actually book me and confirm me for the dates that they need me for, and that's when I know like okay, that's my schedule. And then I'll book my whole day off, even if I know like sometimes I have a couple lines that day, like I know I'll be in and out before even lunch, but get the whole day off because you get paid for the day regardless of how much you're involved in it. Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, I've been. I don't know what's it called. Just what you're familiar, or if you watch the show. But what's it called? Two of the stars of The Sopranos have actually gone back and are doing a podcast where they're kind of rewatching the whole show and recapping each episode week to week. And it's actually pretty interesting because they've had a lot of the actors from the show on in order to talk about it. And a lot of the responses, it's like, yeah, I'm like, wow, I'm going through deja vu here all over again. But so, just as far as specifically Kim's go, right? Because Kim's go, like the show itself, it's kind of interesting because I'm noticing that what's happening with this show, where obviously another Canadian show that was on the same network as Kim's, that being Schitt's Creek. I've talked about this a lot with Chris. That show was kind of under the radar for its first couple seasons, and then with its 5th season, it blew up and hit the stratosphere. And I'm guessing that part of that was, again, just the Netflix of it all, and then that's what kind of like allowed so many people to become more familiar with it. And then with its 6th season, it cleared everything. Like it won every single comedy Emmy at the main Emmy ceremony. Like it won everything. And so I'm noticing that Schitt's Creek is entering and is about to film its 5th season. And I definitely don't know if this is like going to pick up kind of the momentum that Schitt's Creek did, because it was that felt like a very zeitgeist moment, but it definitely seems to be picking up a lot, where I'm hearing more and more people aside from Chris talk about it. It started off as like this cultist show, and then obviously Chris and I have been talking about this with obviously kind of the bigification, because obviously 2 of your co-stars, Paul and Simu, are now working with Disney, and Chris was geeking out when he saw Paul in The Mandalorian. I was like, wait, what?
That was amazing. Especially because he's so open with how much Star Wars means to him, and so that was a really cool, just as someone who's a fan of, because I mean, we don't need to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I do, not that I know him, but from the interviews I've seen and stuff, he actually seems like someone who's genuine in a business where, I mean, we all know there's a lot of Hollywood hypocrisy, I'll just say it. And so I was like, wow, this is a really cool just people moment, seeing a human being who just genuinely loves Star Wars so much actually getting to be in it. What's that like? I mean, that'd be like if I got called up on stage with like AC/DC, they were like, yo, you in the front row, come shred with us. Like that would be that moment for me. So I would like, I just couldn't imagine. But I mean, yeah, so I guess like what's that been like in regards to the show? Do you think that that's helped boost the show? Do you think that the show is bound to sort of catch this global notoriety because of, like Dom said, the Netflix of it all? And because I do genuinely think you guys caught lightning in a bottle. But what's your take on all that?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're absolutely right about Paul, and I think that's kind of why people are so excited for him, because he is genuinely so nice that it's almost not even like seeing a famous actor be in a big property like Star Wars. Like it's almost like seeing someone like personally be in it. It's almost like it is a fan cameo in some regards, other than also the fact that it is a professional thing. But yeah, like the show, like I'm really lucky in that when I joined, like Kim's Convenience, when I joined, had a couple seasons done, and it was pretty popular. It was a popular Canadian show, and it had just gotten, I think, the Netflix deal. I think it like was getting on Netflix right around the time I joined, and it's really cool to see it pick up steam like internationally. And I think with Simu, Simu, his main gig before Shang-Chi is Kim. So I think once that kind of comes out, or like if they drop a trailer soon enough, I think people are going to start flocking to our show to see kind of like what this guy's all about and see if he's got the chops, which he definitely does. And that's going to be really cool. In regards to like comparisons to shits, obviously we're super happy for them. And I know I remember when they like swept the Emmys, which was crazy, especially for Canada. People were mentioning, Kim's in the same kind of vein. There's a lot of like, technical, what am I trying to say here? We can't catch quite the same steam as of now because we don't air simultaneously as they do in the US. So, we're not eligible for Emmys. As you guys know, you have to wait for the whole season to air on CBC before getting it all on Netflix US. So I think some things like that are kind of out of control, that are more from a producer standpoint, are kind of holding us back just a tiny bit. But at the same time, it does build a lot of anticipation, because I feel like it's almost more Americans than Canadians that hit us up on Twitter begging for the season and asking us when it's going to release. And it's like, it's completely out of our control, but definitely the show, like you said, it's kind of like picking up steam in the zeitgeist. And we've got two big stars that are now like making waves with Disney. And I think that can only help us, get more visibility. And I can only hope that it's going to like send us to another level, because we are still, even though we are getting pretty popular, we are still a low budget show,
Yeah, so that's something, and we have some people in the chat sort of hanging. First of all, thank you guys so much for hanging with us. We're chatting with Zaid Ek of Kim's Convenience fame. He plays Omar, who's an amazing character. I want to dive into the character Omar in a little bit. Yes. But if you guys have questions, I see some of us in the chat have asked questions. We will definitely get to those at some point in the conversation. Feel free to share those. But, I'm curious now, because we're sort of talking about the global effect, and I guess, to me, it seems pretty big, but it also seems like every day more people keep finding out about it. So I think you're right. I think once, that Shang-Chi film comes out, the explosion, the ripple effect will be, astronomical. But I'm kind of curious, because Dom and I have no way of knowing this. What has the reception been like in Canada? Is there a show you can maybe compare it to?
What I was going to ask, but the only thing that I wanted to chip in right now is, first off, even though I have slightly more respect for the Emmys than I do the Oscars and most other award ceremonies just in general, I will say that, look, just because something wins an award doesn't mean that it's actually a good show. The Big Bang Theory won how many awards? And I'll be the first person to admit that The Office should have won every single time over The Big Bang Theory. And,
I can agree with.
And here's the one thing, like I said, I hope to God I don't jinx you guys. So hopefully I don't, but I can say this right now. I am certifiably positive that once Shang-Chi comes out, Shang-Chi is going to do for you guys what Guardians of the Galaxy did for Parks and Rec.
We're like 40-year-old virgin for like The Office, right? Sort of.
Well, that's a good point. I've never thought about that.
That's true. Yeah, because that is true, actually, because 40-Year-Old Virgin had a significant effect on the way the creators portrayed the character of Michael Scott going forward in the
exactly.
Office. So
I know the timeline's a bit different, but
no, but that's actually a great point though. Like I'm actually really glad that Chris brought that up. But yeah, dude, never underestimate the power of big budget things. Because look, the one thing that I noticed is that after Guardians of the Galaxy kind of solidified and put Parks and Rec up there, like every other star shot up there, like because you just saw Nick Offerman and Devs, and you saw and Aubrey Plaza's been crushing it, and Rashida Jones was just on the rocks, and all the and Rob Lowe. I mean, Rob Lowe was always going to be Rob Lowe.
That was his comeback, though, let's be honest.
Yeah, and Adam Scott, like you saw all those guys just went and they work. So I mean, I'm telling you, dude, like I said, it never hurts to what's it called, to be friends with people who are associated with Disney. That's the only thing I'm going to say there.
So yeah, I mean, I guess like Canada, man, what's the reception been like throughout the entirety? And is there a show you can sort of compare it to kind of give us here in the States, or I guess worldwide, right, sort of some reference point if we're not from your country?
Damn, is there a show I can compare it to? Canada's TV industry is relatively small. You always hear about Canada not having like a star system. We get a lot of American shows, so we tend to blend in. There aren't a lot of shows in Canada that are as popular. I would say probably no show in Canada is as popular as Schitt's Creek, and I want to say that Kim's is probably. I'm fairly certain that at a certain point it was getting better ratings than Schitt's in Canada in the past couple of years. If I had to compare it to an American show, I don't think I could. Quite honestly, I don't think I could, at least from a kind of, storyline standpoint. And from a popularity standpoint, if you're pitting, I don't know, Parks and Rec versus 30 Rock, we're probably the latter of the two, whichever one is like slightly less popular. But many people in Canada know about Kim's Convenience. We're up on billboards and bus stops and all that kind of stuff. The question is, do people actually watch? It's tough to get people in Canada to watch Canadian stuff because there is so much US content and we have it basically all. Like I think the only stuff that we don't get in Canada from the US is like Hulu stuff, because we don't have Hulu here. We have like deals, like we have Netflix obviously, and then we have deals that like bring HBO and Showtime stuff to our like streaming here. But I think Hulu is basically the only stuff that's hard to get in Canada. Other than that, we get everything. Right.
So you can't download Hulu like on your phone?
No, Hulu is like a US only thing. Like
I didn't know that.
Did not know that.
That's actually really
lock this thing.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting to know.
Are you saying that around season 3-ish, when Kim's hit Netflix, it hitting Netflix and then having this, I'd say, very big global audience that seems to keep growing each day is what finally is getting the citizens of Canada interested in it, because now other places like it. And so there's like a reverse effect of where now everyone's priding themselves on the Canadian show because other people like it. Is that sort of, because I heard there's a stigma around Canadian television. So I'm curious from Canadians.
It's 100% the case. And not only that, so we air, starting from season 3, we started airing in January instead of the fall. We air like January through like March or April, 13 weeks, whatever that is, on CBC and CBC Gem. So CBC is free to all Canadians and CBC Gem is as well. People tend to not know that. So people that don't have cable, they just have Netflix and all that stuff, they stick to Netflix. It doesn't go on Netflix US until we end airing. And it doesn't go on Netflix Canada until 9 months after that. So if we start airing in January, our season drops on Netflix in October in Canada. So we see 3 different levels of uptick in the hype. There's like the true fans that are watching right now, like the episodes that air every Tuesday. And then there's the American boost that we get in April when everyone starts binging it. And then in the fall, randomly, we'll get like all of a sudden when our season drops on Netflix Canada, we'll get another boost of people. But Netflix is without a doubt like what made us blow up. I think the show was good enough for Canadian TV viewers that watch Canadian TV to hype it up. And then Netflix just kind of brought us to that next level.
But what is that stigma about Canadian TV that Canadians feel? Because I've watched a few Canadian programs and I found them all to be really delightful. I don't have that stigma though, not being from your country.
So I can get into a more like, historical / technical, explanation of it. there's Canada throughout its entire history has struggled with figuring out its identity because we are very close to America and Americans, but we're not quite the same. So, and because we get all the American shows, people tend to veer towards American drama and comedy and stuff like that. When it comes to Canadian TV, a lot of the time Canadian TV tries to do like America, but with quite a bit less money. So the production value ends up suffering, and you get a lot of shows that are made in Canada that are pretty bad because they're like the sci-fi, like Teen Wolf-esque shows. You know, the CW shoots like so much stuff in Canada, and I love watching stuff on the CW, but like there's a certain level, you know, of quality there that tends to be like what we can produce in Canada. We're getting way better at it now, and that's how you get shows like Kim's Convenience and Schitt's Creek that are made for not a lot of money, that are so good on their own that they don't get considered as like Canadian TV, which has the stigma of being low budget and pretty crappy and like not good enough, like the American stuff that like NBC produces or CBS. Like we can't compete with that stuff. But that's kind of like why, like, I think in Canada we struggle like figuring out what good Canadian content is, because we're always kind of like, we've always kind of got a little brother mentality, trying to separate ourselves from the US, but at the same time trying to emulate what the US does.
Yeah, interesting.
That's actually really, really interesting the way, because like I never really thought about it. I mean, yeah, I knew about like a lot of the stuff that was shot in Canada, but like I always did kind of wonder that, as far as like, oh, what actually does make for like original Canadian? Because like I said, I mean, your dad's a cinema professor, so you know all about that. Like, you know all about the history of film and like what a distinct identity each of the different like there's like Russian films have a very distinct feel, and Chinese films have a very distinct film, and Japanese and Italian and French and all of those. Like, there's like a long laundry list of films that have like different identities. So that's really interesting though, that like Canada is like only now finally getting into a position where it's like, yeah, we have like a really unique identity overall. And as far as the whole NBC of it all, I will say that, sure, even though you guys might not be like to the popularity level that they might be at, but also there's the fact that, to me, NBC hasn't been churning out that good content, at least definitely recently.
Well, not anymore, yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. They have come a long way since the golden age in the late 2000s that really lasted, again, for the majority of the run. But I just wanted to bring it back to that for a second and kind of just talk about the sitcom nature of it all. And I think, Chris, this is actually going to be something that's going to apply to you as well, because Chris called himself definitely the sitcom king. Just as far as my personal relationship with television goes, just so that you know personally, I would never consider myself to be a gigantic fan of sitcoms. I've seen the big ones. I've seen Seinfeld. I've seen Friends. I've seen How I Met Your Mother. I've seen Parks and Rec. I've seen The Office. And those shows vary in range for me. But I would definitely consider myself, to, when I watch TV, to be more of a drama guy. When I watch TV, I want to watch drama. I want my sprawling cast of characters, and I want my like multiple deep storylines, and I want my gigantic plot twists. And I'm just gonna admit that HBO kind of spoiled me early on, because when I started watching like TV on my own, it was almost exclusively HBO, and we all know that HBO is like a level that's like a step above everyone else. But I think the thing that intrigued me so much about Kim's is that I'll say I have the stigma, for lack of a better word, of whenever I watch a new sitcom, I'm like, okay, when are the tropes going to roll in, and when do they start to get into the repetitive humor? And the thing that I admired immediately off the bat about Kim's is not that it wasn't doing those tropes, but it was managing to develop its own unique identity kind of outside of them. And rather than falling into them, it was able to make the characters feel like real human beings enough in order to like make that, in order to like kind of give it that like extra level, that extra oomph. And like when I watched,
they weren't archetypes,
right? Exactly. Like when I watch them, I'm like, okay, so I'm like, okay, no, I'm not watching the stereotypical immigrant father who's clashing with the first generation American kids and all that. And I'm not doing that. And like none of those thoughts are on my head. I'm like, oh no, this is just like a family, and this is just kind of like them getting through, And there are so many opportunities where it could get like into such easy, jokey material, but it doesn't. It's like the scripts are really well written, and the scenarios are like really well thought out, and the humor is like, even though it is situational humor, it's still really funny. So like I don't know, like, could you speak to that? Like, what is it you think that gives it like that little extra touch?
Yeah, it's a pretty easy answer, to be honest. Kim started as a play, and our showrunner and creator, Ince Choi, is a playwright. A lot of the actors that come on are theater actors. One of our producing partners is Soul Pepper Theater here in Toronto, which is a big Toronto theater that actually So the show started as a fringe show, and then Soul Pepper picked it up and gave it a proper like commercial theater run, and then that then got picked up by Thunderbird Films and the CBC. And so I think that kind of answers your question. They're not like, yes, they are TV. There are TV writers and there's people with TV experience. One of our showrunners was on Corner Gas for a while. So there's that aspect of it. But we're really coming at it from a theater background where you do create these full characters because you have the luxury of like whatever, an hour and a half, 2 hours on stage. You're not just going through like your check marks of like, this is the funny guy, this is the the comedic relief dude or whatever, like those archetypes that you find. And yeah, like we're gonna fall into tropes one way or another at some point, but at the core these characters are fully realized first and foremost, and these storylines are very organic because I think they are coming from a theater perspective first and foremost, and then adapting it to the screen.
Yeah, totally. And I did know about the play, and I have heard a bit about the history of Inns and how he sort of just kept getting notoriety, and the show went from having a few seats sold out to then being on billboards in some of the major cities and just like selling out and whatnot. But as far as I know, Handy wasn't in the play, right? It was more focused on the immigrant family and sort of that dynamic between the mother and father, Appa and Oma, and the children. So they did kind of expand a lot. And correct me if I'm misstating anything here, because again, I just kind of know this from just doing research on my own. So, but I do feel that they kept some of the play spirit in there, because I do think there's something very different, even though fundamentally it is still a sitcom, right? It's still a tight 22 minutes. It still kind of has like your cold opens. It still has like, it has those things that draw that audience in, but it feels different. Yet from what I know, the show expanded way farther than the play ever did. So, how do you think that it translates? Have you seen the play? The Handy world and all that, like the expansion. Do you think that it's stayed rooted in that core, or do you think that it borrows from that, or do you think it's okay that maybe it's not quite, maybe Appa and Oma's world is a little more rooted in the original source material, and then you guys are a little more modern? Like, speak to that. Like, what's your take on all that, and how it's evolved and progressed as a property?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't see the show, but at the time that the show, I didn't see the play. But at the time that the play was blowing up, I was still in high school, and it's the first. Like I said, I come from a French background in Canada, and it's the first play that I was aware of in the Canadian English theater landscape. So I kind of like knew what it was about vaguely, but I hadn't read it until actually, literally maybe 2 weeks ago. I had a copy for a while, and I just read it. Our TV show is quite different from the play. Like you said, Handy doesn't exist. It's only there's a reference to it in that Jung. It's said in the play that Jung works at a car rental place, and the characters in the play are quite a bit older than what they are in the movie, in the TV show. What they decided to do was kind of set those characters back, I think, about 10 years and explore how they got to that point. So I think that's kind of why we have a lot of a leeway in kind of expanding the world, because you started in your first season with those characters that had kind of an end goal in mind, that is the play. And then you kind of had to figure out how to create 5 seasons now of 13 times 22 minutes of those, whatever shenanigans. And so I think that kind of helps. Obviously, what I said earlier about the theater world, I think it's more about being, our showrunner comes from a theater world, so he kind of has that awareness when it comes to running the writer's room. Obviously, the writers are all TV guys, and so, like you said, we do follow a TV format, and we are fully a TV show. But I think we just kind of have that extra added sensibility of producers and writers and actors that come from a theater world that operates slightly differently from your typical TV set, that creates a whole atmosphere around the show when we're shooting, and around the quality of the actors and the acting and the kind of the pacing of the comedy itself, that kind of gives it a different feel. And boy, am I glad that they expanded, because I wouldn't be here if they hadn't kind of blown up that whole Handy world after their first 2 seasons.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
so
really interesting. So wait, do you think then that means that potentially, if the show gets to a certain point, it could potentially intersect with where the play is? Like, does that mean, like, if I'm reading what you're
Well,
saying correctly, does it mean that that the whole show kind of up to this point has been a prequel to the play?
Dom, this just shows how much you and I hang out, because that's totally where I want it to go, because I don't want to
This is
spoil
literally
anything. And
yeah, just to give you an example, people literally, we have a mutual friend who literally said, "Wow, even though you two have had not seen each other for months, like at the beginning of the pandemic when it first broke out, I never would have been able to tell because you two are seem closer now than you were
man.
pre the pandemic."
because I don't want to spoil anything. And Zia, just so you know, I'm that much of a fan that I thought about emailing CBC and being like, "Yo, people are throwing this up on YouTube, and I don't want people watching this new season for the first time in 480p. So fix that." So I've been holding it back, man. I want everyone to get the full experience, but thinking about where things left off, I mean, so you do have the sort of start-stop episodes. You can watch them, I'd say highlighted and get something out of the story. But then there's also the overarching narrative, which I think we can credit towards shows like The Office and Community, which in the early 2000s sort of added that through line to sitcoms that we kind of didn't have in the sitcoms of yesteryear. And I appreciate that. I very much want to grow with my characters and see them go through more than just a start and stop, procedural sort of shenanigan narrative. And the way that this last season left off, and I will not spoil anything here because I know Jay in the chat says he's going to now watch it. So, but we're progressing, and we progressed quite quickly from when we started off in this show with these characters. I mean, you spoke about being green coming into Kim's Convenience. Look at Janet. She was green to the world at the start of this show, and now she's lived a whole life almost and has come out of this such a completely different person. And so, yeah, speak to Dom's question, do you think there is a possibility of this show going all the way up to where they are and meeting those characters from the play?
It's so there's definitely elements from the play that we've already seen in the show, certain characters and certain storyline bits that have kind of been integrated. Could it reach the point of the play? I'm not sure, because even though it does feel like it did start as a sort of prequel, it is, to me, it is quite a bit different from the play, and in the way that it's evolved, and it's much funnier than the play. Like the play, I didn't see it, but the play had very serious moments, dramatic moments, and very funny moments. Ours really tends to veer on the comedy more so than the seriousness, although, like you said, it is growing now to, we're kind of touching on some more mature subjects now. Could it intersect? Probably in some regards, but not as linearly as something like Star Wars did. You know what I mean? We're not going to have, I don't think, the Anakin turning into Darth Vader moment. I don't think we're kind of headed towards that.
Or digitally de-aged Luke Skywalker showing up and mowing through 30 battle droids.
I think we can skip that. I think we've already seen elements from our characters where they, there's similar thematics that we find in the play where they're at. But I do think that our characters have already, in some respects, evolved, and you'll see in this new season, I think they've evolved past certain aspects of where they were at when they were introduced in the play. Janet, for example, personally, the Janet from the play, I think I don't see how our Janet could, reach the point where she's at in the play. And same with our Jung. I think they've already grown past that in a way.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, now I got to look up a PDF or something online of the play. I wish I could see that in person, let alone read it. But, I am curious, because we spoke about sort of the handy world being referenced in the play, which I didn't actually know, which is very interesting. It seems that there's always been sort of a roadmap maybe for something more, but now we're seeing it. And it wasn't originally there fully fleshed out, and that's the world you're a part of. And, a lot of people have sort of made this commentary. I don't claim to be the first to make it, but I do find it very interesting in regards to Kim's Convenience kind of balances two different shows in one show. And yeah, sure, sometimes there is a crossover, like you reference those CW shows, they'll cross over. You'll have Jung's GED graduation party. And so the cast of the convenience store comes to handy. But for the most part, you guys are kind of each on your own separate islands, and yet it works together. So I'm curious, like, as to your take about that, because that is certainly something unique that I have not seen in any other sitcom, let alone show, really, that kind of threads that needle that tightly.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think Andrew Fung, who plays Kimchi, said it basically from my first day on set, where he said the exact same thing. We're basically like two separate shows, and it's kind of 50-50. I do not interact with any characters from the convenience store. I get to see them on set every once in a while and kind of hang out behind the scenes, but it really does feel like a different show. And you can also tell because people that don't watch the show, that just know the name, when I'll tell them that I'm on the show, and they'll kind of ask me about it, I have to kind of explain this whole thing where it's like, no, I don't get to interact with Appa. No, I'm not a customer at the convenience store. No, I'm in that separate world that may have started as the B plot kind of, but has now grown to be completely 50-50. And on the one hand, it's super cool and exciting to be a part of that. On the other hand, it makes it so that I don't even know at this point, with how we grow, how you could do this show without one of the two parts. Like if major changes were to happen, yeah, logically, like if you're no longer too connected to the kins part of the show, maybe you could, like in theory, get rid of Handy. But it is now like 50% of our each episode, so it would be really tough. And we've grown in, our cast on the Handy side has gotten very popular, as well as the convenience store side of it. So we're kind of at the point where you have to balance both out. And I think the writers do enjoy that challenge of writing for both worlds, and kind of giving each their fair share to bite off.
Yeah, it's interesting only because, like, I know for a fact that that's, well, besides the fact that I can say off the bat that that's usually a storytelling kind of mode that's more so reserved for dramas. At least for my money, you don't usually see that in a lot of comedies. And usually when you do, it's usually like a quick one-off for a joke for an episode. Like you'll see Kramer go off and do something dumb in Seinfeld, or you'll have like April and Andy have their own little subplot of Parks and Rec, or it'll be the Jim Dwight one-off joke that's going on throughout the underside of The Office. But you never really get that sense in a sitcom where, no, you got kind of this almost separate story that's underlying the main story. That's always the thing that you'll see in dramas. And most of the time in dramas, it usually, I'm not gonna say it doesn't work, but half the time, like, they kind of always use that as like a storytelling device, as, we're keeping these characters separate on purpose and having these two separate storylines so that it can build and make the conclusion more satisfying. Like, again, Game of Thrones made that from the bulk of it for most of the show, where they had all these characters that they set up in the first episode and then separated them for like a majority of the show. But that, I think, is really interesting because, like, I mean, I'm still relatively new. I'm only a couple of episodes into the first season, but from what I've seen and just of the Handy world, just in general, like, I'm really impressed with like how separate it is. It's like, no, when they mean that Jung was estranged from Appa, like, they mean it, like, literally to the point where they have like no interaction, at least in the episodes that I've seen so far. So, like, that's impressive, to say the least, that a sitcom is able to pull that off, because I don't think that's something that I really haven't seen in any of the sitcoms that I've seen. So, I mean, props there automatically. Now, just if we can talk about your character for a second, Omar.
Sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, at the risk of sounding too pretentious, but I feel like it's like, what kind of is it that you see in him? Like, what is it? I mean, I don't want to do that thing of like, like what attracted you to the character, but like, what is it kind of like that you see in him? What is it that you think like makes him a relatable, standout character overall? Where do you like kind of see him going for the trajectory of the future of the show?
So I've now on my third season. Early on, it was tough to kind of establish the character as a fully fleshed human being, especially in the first season that I showed up in season 6. Even though I popped up in season 3, even though I popped up in about half the episodes, it was really kind of blink and you miss it. And as the time has gone by, the character has grown, and I really enjoy the way they've dealt with him. I think this season 5, that you guys are going to get to see probably around April, I think that's when the character really found his voice. I got an episode that aired last week, episode 4, was actually my biggest episode. I got to be part of kind of the B plot of that week. I think he's a guy that like is happy to be there. He's fine working kind of in the background and, you know, jumping in and saying a couple funny things and helping the story, you know, advance. But I think also it's one of those things that with time, as you give him more to do, he's going to establish himself a little bit more. And he's not like the guy that's got the really sassy quips like Stacey does, you know. He's not the guy that's really strange like Terrence is, you know. So it's kind of one of those things that it took time, but now more and more, the more you see me, the more you kind of get to notice me, and the more, you know, the fans get to get to know him at the same time as I get to know him.
Yeah. So oftentimes on sitcoms, you kind of hear the story of, you know, I thought I was just showing up for the one episode, one and done. And then I got called back for another. And I didn't really think into that too much. And then I got called back for another. And another. And so I'm curious, hearing you and having seen the show a few times now, you know, it is kind of like a blink if you miss him, you won't see Omar in that third season. And then in the fourth season, I believe, you're trying to work up your courage to ask a certain someone in Handy out, and we won't spoil that for anyone.
Yeah.
And so you're getting more involved slowly but surely. Sure, it's still, I'd say, more of a smaller role in the overall narrative. It's like a B plot of the B narrative, but like you're involved more. You know, Omar's, we're learning more about his personality. We're getting a little more of him, but was it one of kind of those moments where you weren't quite sure your future of the show when you first got on set that first time? Or was this kind of like something where you were told, just hang with us, we're going to work you in more as time goes on?
Yeah, so I hadn't paid attention to this, but the actual breakdown that I got when I auditioned for it said that it was a recurring. I knew I got one day and that I was shooting parts of 2 episodes in it. So I knew I was in at least 2 episodes. After that, like, all I was told was that if they like you, they might write you in some more stuff. And like I said, the main cast does get, you know, they get more of the scripts. So those guys knew that I was coming back. I had no idea. At the end of my first day, you know, I'm hugging everyone and they're like, okay, we'll see you soon. And I'm like, oh yeah, I hope. And they're like, no, like we'll see you soon. I still, after that, you know, I did a few episodes. I think I did like 6, went to the wrap party, still had no idea whether I was coming back. I felt pretty good, but, you know, I just hung out, left the party. As I'm leaving, our showrunner comes up to me. He's like, we'll see you next year. And I went, oh, okay, great. We'll see you next year. Great. I, you know, get the contract the year after. They say, okay, we're going to give you X amount of days and you'll be in X amount of episodes guaranteed, maybe more. I ended up doing like twice as many days as they had guaranteed me. And I think at that point I realized, oh, like I am now fully like a supporting character in this show. I think that means I'm coming back, and it's pretty certain of it. Now we're on season 5, gave me even more days. And I had the advantage of Simu wasn't around for the beginning of the season because he was still wrapping Shang-Chi in Australia because of all the delays. So he missed the first like month and a half, I think, of our shooting, and he had to cram his portion at the end of our shooting season. So I got even more days, you know, and I think it's gotten to the point now that I kind of am comfortable enough to, even though I don't want to jinx it and all, knock on wood and all that stuff, but I'm pretty confident I'm coming back for season 6. You know what I mean? I don't know how much, but I'm established enough at this point that, you know, I'm part of the recurring players on that show. And I think you're starting to see it more in small things. Like I start to pop up in our social media stuff a little bit more. The Kim's social media posted a watch guide with all the characters, and I'm one of them now. So I think it's kind of establishing me a little bit more as like officially part of the gang, you know. But nobody's really told me anything. They don't tell me anything. They just kind of go, here, you're back. You're part of the crew. Like,
yep,
and
sounds
it's
like
business as usual.
That would kill me.
Yeah, but the problem is that's the majority of the acting world now. That is unless you're like one of the main guys. It's like if you're anything else, it's like, yeah, that's just how it goes. Yeah. So the last kind of major question that I have before we kind of like, because we're running a long time, and I wanted to like focus on like you know, just a little bit of like fun and goofy stuff, because like
that's exactly what I was thinking.
That's part of
and
the charm.
Jay has a question in the chat too. I'd like to ask.
Yeah.
So yeah, same page now.
That's part of the charm of our show. We do the formal official stuff, but at the end of the day, we're just here to hang. It's the whole reason why we started this podcast. We just wanted a place where we could come and chill and have fun and talk about movies. And again, like, you're clearly a movie buff, so this just made me even happier, because the thing that I'm really loving about all of our famous people is like, oh, cool, so we can just like riff with famous people and have fun and talk about movies. Cool, because I literally, Chris, I live and breathe movies. I literally don't like talking about anything else other than movies.
Very true.
You can imagine how that's went for a majority of my relationships just in my real life. But the thing that I wanted to speak to is the idea of the thing that I've noticed again, like, and this is the thing that I noticed with Shits is it seems to be like 6 seasons and then, you know, again, only 13 episodes and that's it, which is just seems to be the opposite of the American television model for so long, where for so long the American television model was, okay, we got to make this shit run for as long as possible, for as many episodes as possible. We actually ended up seeing that hurt a lot of really good shows overall. Like we saw that arguably kill like a lot of recent shows. But the thing that I hate is that the television programs here seem to have almost like taken the wrong lesson from that, where now instead of like learning from those problems and fixing it in a natural way, now it seems like every solution is, okay, let's just make it shorter as possible and try and cram as much in because we don't know if we're going to get canceled after 2 seasons. Like I like one of the things that I absolutely hate that Netflix does with their original programming is if it doesn't have, forget if it doesn't have the numbers, if it doesn't have like a following of some kind, like if it's not like getting the memes and it's not like getting the talk, it gets axed. Like one of our favorite shows of the last couple of years was Glow on Netflix starring Allison Brie, and we were beyond infuriated when Netflix gave that the axe, especially since by all accounts they were finished with the 4th season. They had finished filming that, right? So
yeah, there was no reason for that.
Right, exactly. But kind of how that speaks to my greater point is that to me it kind of robs you of the experience of television, because to me the cool experience of television is coming back to it year after year and getting, you know, like the 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 seasons. So that way you get that way to me, like the majesty of it is whenever you can come back to it, you see that like, oh no, this was building into it and this was part of the whole in order to kind of flesh out the story. And yeah, it might not make for always some of the best experiences, but like me, I think the reason why people keep going back to The Office and why people keep going back to and all these different shows is because at the end of the day, they know they're getting like a fully rounded, complete story with so many multiple different facets that built into it over time, kind of almost to the point where you're seeing now movies specifically where, to my point, specifically where you see that that's part of the reason why the Marvel movies have been so successful the way they were, is because you had like all this stuff over time to build into it. So like, what is it like that, like honestly, that the CBC understood about that early on, that just American television just can't seem to get the grasp of? They understand, 6 seasons, perfect succinct amount of episodes, and they never overstay their welcome, but they also always have like just the right amount of story. Like you never feel like you're like, I haven't watched a single episode of Kim's or a single season of Kim's yet where I feel like I've missed anything per se, you know?
Yeah. Look, I don't know. I don't know how long our show is gonna go. Genuinely, I have my own kind of thoughts of where like I could feasibly see it kind of headed. There's some contract stuff. There's some growth from the characters' perspectives and the actors built in. All I know is that we are officially renewed for a 6th season, and that the past couple of renewals we've had were 2-season renewals. So, after season 2, they get renewed for 3 and 4, and then after 4, they're renewed for 5 and 6. Beyond that, I can't really speak to what their plans are. I do agree that 6 is a solid number. On the other hand, we are such a short show with 13 episodes that really, compared to the American model, it's almost like we've only, if we do like 13 episodes for season 6, it's almost like we've only had 3 full seasons. Like, Friends was running for like 22 to 24 24 a year.
Look at It's Always Sunny right now. That show will never end.
Still going.
Unbelievable, right? Yeah. So I don't know where we're headed. I could definitely see us going past the 6th season mark. The show has proved that it's able to grow, that it's able to get it more mature and not kind of stay at the same level of topic that they talk about. At the same time, we are a popular enough show that I think if the showrunners want to keep going, they'll be able to, and if they don't, then they'll also be able to properly conclude, and we won't be left hanging with like these storylines that are enclosed, which I totally agree. I absolutely hate, like, when I have a show that's like a one and done. Yeah, like let's not even.
I was about. Don't worry. We got a whole separate series of podcasts that we got coming up later on that's going to tackle that whole mess. So.
Yeah, and I'm totally with both of you guys on that sentiment. And it seems like just the amount of stock that this show's built up worldwide, and how amazing of a network CBC seems to be in regards to how they handle their business and their shows. I think if unfortunately we don't get more than a 6th season, I think it will kind of wrap up in a nice way. And it must be comforting to be on a network that kind of has like that track record of sort of like actually when they say we're going to work with you on something, they're creators. It seems that they do.
Definitely probably
Yeah.
makes just the overall job stability mentality there just way better in general. Like, I can't imagine what it would be. Like, could you imagine, like, I cannot imagine a more stressful place to work than Netflix, where you have no, like, it can be like, here today,
But you wouldn't turn it down
gone
either.
tomorrow. No, you wouldn't turn it down either.
Yeah.
That's what's so freaking terrifying about it, is the problem overall.
Yeah.
So,
So,
yeah.
Jay's been hanging the whole time. We got a fan question.
We got to
for you.
bring him in. Yeah, we got a fan
And this
question.
is like one of our like diehard supporters here on the channel. So we're really glad he showed up. And he's curious, man, did you do any local theater, or plays in high school? I know you loosely touched upon your early experience, but is there any like distinct memories, anything you look fondly back on?
The first ever acting I did was actually when I was in the, I think, 3rd or 4th grade. It was the 4th grade. The local high school needed kids to play Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz. So that's the first thing I did. But
Nice.
other than that, no, through high school, like I went to an arts high school, like I said, and we were doing a lot of plays at school. And then in university, our program was so heavily condensed that we couldn't do outside stuff. So I really only started working even in the summer. They didn't love us doing that. They really wanted us to kind of rest and do other things and not just focus our entire lives on like theater and stuff like that. Other people have done local, theater and stuff like that while they were in school. I didn't. I waited until I graduated. Since I've graduated, I did do a French play that we did pretty well. We won an award for. It's like a yearly show that they do, where they get high schoolers to send in stories, and then they select 5, and then they put up a play. So I was like in the 7th, edition of that play. I did do that. I did have a play that was an Annie Baker play. For those who follow theater, she's a really big playwright in New York. We got canceled because of COVID. And that's kind of, I've got a lot of school theater experience, but nothing professional outside of that.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yes, because of course the dreaded COVID. So before we get out of here,
I had one more question for him, just to end it on a fun note, Dom, because I think we're both curious.
Yeah.
What would be your favorite film or TV show? Do you have something that you kind of like can watch in sickness and in health, or just to get a little, who is, Zayed, like what do you like to watch and sort of chill out to?
I watch everything almost. I'm massive into superheroes. I watch most. That's not true. I was gonna say I watch most superhero TV shows, but I actually don't. I
was about to say. I was about to say. I'm like, I'm gonna have to be like, I'm gonna call you on that one.
Yeah, no, I watch all the superhero movies. The TV shows I watch like The Flash and like WandaVision, but I don't watch. But I watch all kinds of stuff. I like cop shows, even though I don't like cops. I like comedies. I like drama. I recently just finished a full binge of Friends, which was quite an experience. Wow. I'd never done it from start to finish, so I did that. Game of Thrones I got into really late. Like I think it was, literally before the final season, I binged the entire thing. I did like the first 5 seasons, then I took a break, and then I did season 6 and 7, and then I watched the last season, which that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, if only you got into it earlier. Oh, I feel so bad for you.
I didn't get any of that anticipation, because I just binged the whole thing, which was kind of it was a cool experience because I didn't get to suffer like the fans did. I didn't have that whole like, is Jon Snow coming back? I was like, yeah, of course he is, But yeah, there's no like one thing that I watch, I just kind of see where it goes. But I do love me like some action stuff, like for sure.
Like, so did you watch Extraction when that came out on Netflix?
I did not, no.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, only because like for some. That was the Chris Hemsworth.
I did see that. Yeah.
No, only because I know for a couple like my diehard like guys were like, they watch this stuff for like how the camera works. Like my one friend was texting me, he was like, yo, there was this one camera move that they did in that movie that I'm like, I've never seen that in anything before. So like that was something cool. So I guess that kind of factors into my question, which is I'm like, so Chris talked about like what you like to watch. So but my question is, what's your so first off, favorite movie and favorite TV show of all time? That's what I want to know first.
Okay, favorite movie, it's tough because I used to say like Inception was my favorite movie, and I do still think it's like unreal. But to be honest, there's this movie which I don't know if you guys know, Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, 110% we know that.
You can say we know about that movie.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Like that, like even though I keep saying Inception, because it's, I guess, more like highbrow. Scott Pilgrim is probably the movie I've seen the most. It's so freaking rewatchable.
Yes.
And living in Toronto now, like for the last 6.5 years, it's so much more relatable. Like when I read the novels, like I didn't live in Toronto, so I didn't connect as much. But yeah, like Scott Pilgrim, want to say that.
Yeah, and then you
novels are so good.
Yeah, and then and then you moved to Toronto, and you're like, wow, okay. Aside from like the video game graphics and stuff, wow, I didn't realize just how much Toronto is for like that.
So Toronto,
it's so, you want to know what's hilarious is last year when the pandemic first set in, and we were like kind of adjusting, and we kind of made the move where we were audio only before we came to YouTube. We did episodes, so we did a podcast episode where we rewatched Scott Pilgrim and then talked about it because it was close to the 10 or around. We knew the movie was turning 10 last year, and then we did an Inception watch along, and it was so funny because the whole time during Scott Pilgrim we could not shut up about how good the movie was and how relatable it was and how incredibly it aged. And Inception, we were just silent because the funniest thing is that I've always been of the mind since I saw it, because Inception was like, because I was only 13 when that movie came out. Yeah. And I was always of the mind that like, this is cool and this is like way like better film than anything I've ever seen before. But the concept, and I think it was just kind of the hype to it, I still think that movie's kind of a tad bit overrated, and I think that it's still my least favorite Nolan movie, surprisingly enough.
Really?
Yeah, I like his like less like Following and Insomnia, which are like his two movies that nobody ever talks about more than Inception. Like I like Tenet more than Inception.
I love
like,
Tenet. I'm just gonna say
Tenet was great.
More than Inception?
I liked Tenet more than Inception.
Definitely more than Inception.
Yeah.
Definitely more
I
than Inception.
have issues with Inception. We may have to have you on for another podcast.
This is why we had to have you come back, because now that you've like got to know us professionally, now you got to get to know us personally and understand that when we say we are the kings of hot takes, but like we back our shit up, we mean it overall.
It's not just a YouTube thing. I like.
No, unfortunately, it is not just a YouTube thing. I wish it was, but and then what's your favorite TV show? You would say?
That's tough, man, because like there's some shows that I absolutely loved, but that I wouldn't really rewatch. Like Community, I think, is one of the shows that like just blew my mind when I saw it. But I don't know that like I've rewatched a couple of episodes since, and not that it doesn't hold up, but it's just not the same to me, Like when I first saw those paintball episodes, like that blew my mind, But now I'm like, I think I've seen too much. Something like Friends, though, like that I've recently finished, like that I find very, very rewatchable. Mm-hmm. But Community was a big one. I mean, even something like, definitely not one of my favorites, but like something like Californication that I watched after it was done. One. I just like binged it and I was like, awesome. I'm like, I can live and breathe Californication, and now that's it. That's it for me. I don't have to rewatch it.
You watch Entourage?
I did not know.
If I could throw you some recommend, that is what I would definitely recommend. If you're a fan of Californication, kind of that type of show, most definitely would recommend it. I will say that certain of the things in it have definitely not aged well, just based solely on the time in which it came out. But there are certain moments in that show that I go back to and I just cannot help myself from. Like there's a moment where they go to Vegas and it's just I won't spoil it because it's hilarious. Right. Yeah, Community is so interesting because I love that show and I rewatch that show probably like religiously and like more than any other show that I've watched, and it's probably the only sitcom that I like say I would like. Besides Parks and Rec, really, that I really like actively love. But the more I realize it's because like, that is a show that is made exclusively for me, and I like it specifically because it doesn't, or it kind of does, but it's able to like play around with the sitcom tropes in a way that like really, really exclusively appeals to me. Like that.
I also think like I saw Community at the right time. Like I was the right age, the right time to see Community. I was watching it right around the hype before like they moved to Yahoo for that really bad season at the end. So I think I caught the right wave, and that's kind of like, you got to be right place, right time for some shows. Like there's so many good shows that I'm probably never going to see because I missed out on the hype. Like, like Mad Men and Breaking Bad. Well, I've seen like 2 seasons of Breaking Bad, to be fair, but like, I don't know if I'll ever go back and rewatch them because there's so much more to look forward to now.
Well, the one thing that I can say to that is that obviously, given just kind of that we're in a little bit of still kind of a dead zone right now as far as content. I mean, it's picking up now that we're getting into the year, but now you definitely have a dead zone. I would definitely take a chance, go back and watch some of those shows, because I can definitely say that even though it is definitely a long investment, to say the least, it is definitely worthwhile, because I'm rewatching The Sopranos right now. I'm almost done with Mad Men. I haven't watched Breaking Breaking Bad since I watched it the first time, but I finished all of Better Call Saul that's out in preparation for that season, and that's making me nostalgic for Breaking Bad. And West Wing is really great. And like there's some good shows out there, definitely, that I would recommend. Yeah, there's a lot of them. And also another one that I would recommend just to throw your way if you haven't gotten into it yet. I don't know how much British TV you watch. Like I know obviously Sherlock had its moment, but Skins, I would most definitely recommend Skins if you haven't watched that yet. Like the British one, not the American one. No, the American one doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned, but the British Skins, definitely. So, and then the last question that I wanted to to throw
real
your
quick,
way.
while we're doing suggestions, just because Jay Manley hit our guest with
Great
a suggestion here.
by the way. Fantastic suggestion.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
In my opinion, his only actual good movie.
You ever seen Brick?
I haven't seen Brick. No, but I've heard a lot about it.
The best way that I can describe it to everyone is that it's LA Confidential meets 10 Things I Hate About You. And no, I'm not just saying that because of Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in both. That's the best. That is literally the best way that I can describe it. It is
cool.
that. It is a neo-noir that's of the 90s set in a high school setting. And it should be bonkers and ridiculous, and it is, but it's so engaging, and Gordon-Levitt is so good at where he's basically played like this private eye, but I'm like, dude, you're 15, or at least like he's playing 15, and like I don't know what it is. I don't know how Johnson pulls it off, because every other time he's tried to pull it off, I've been like, no, that doesn't work, and this is not working for me. But that's the one instance where I'm like, okay, this is like really cool, and it's got like a really dark, messed up ending too. So
really cool.
I would very much recommend that one. Yeah,
I love high school like stuff. I adore like high school comedies and even like Riverdale, which I know is a cardinal sin.
I love Riverdale.
I love Riverdale. It's
same, dude.
Oh man,
all my buddies like shit on me so much for it.
Hey, you want to hear something hilarious, man? We're friends with the one of our former film professors. He's actually sort of does guest segments on the show with us. He'll guest host series, Professor Pat, and he loves Riverdale too.
Yeah.
And we totally know what it is. Yeah, he loves it.
Wait, why is this the
He's
first
in my
time hearing
fantasy
about
football
this?
league, and his name is a Riverdale reference. It's amazing. He doesn't want people to know. I'm sorry, I just outed Pat, but like, it's a great show. I get it, man. I do.
Dude.
Like, there's just shows like that like.
What about Chilling Adventures of Sabrina? You
understand.
watch that one?
I watched a couple episodes. There's a lot of shows that like I'll watch one episode or like two, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I like that, and I just never like pick it back up. Like and it's not that they're bad. It's just I don't know. It's really tough for me to commit to a show, and I think that's kind of why I didn't like watch some of those like really good like 5-6 season shows like Mad Men and Breaking Bad, and because I'm afraid like of the commitment of starting it.
Trust me, as far as commitments go, I can understand that because there's more finales that have shit the bed than others. But as far as those ones go, especially The Sopranos too, like it's so weird because The Sopranos is a show that you wouldn't think would have aged well, just given what it's about and kind of all the different things. But that show was aged like a fine wine, and it's arguably I would say
mafia stuff.
Yeah, but just not even just the mafia stuff, just like the television stuff. And when you understand the context of like that's the show that effectively jump-started the age of television that we all lived and grew up through, and seeing kind of like all the different things that came from that and just all the spin-offs and how that show is what gave us Boardwalk Empire and Mad Men, because the creators of those two shows were writers on The Sopranos. And like it's really, really fascinating, just again, like all the different things that it's tackled. And the crazy thing is that show has arguably got more fans now that are our age because of people who have gotten into it over the years that obviously either just couldn't watch it when they were younger or just weren't around when it was a thing. And like that's the reason why the Two Stars have a Sopranos podcast that's almost just as big as the show itself. So, but that's just that one specific show. And then the last question that I wanted to throw your way before we got out of here, which was it's a thing that I'm kind of riffing from the big picture. I don't know how familiar you are with the Ringer network, but they're a podcast network that I've really been getting into recently. It's funny you mentioned the term rewatchable. They literally have a podcast feed called The Rewatchables, where they go back and each episode they just talk about some of their favorite movies. I think their most recent one they did was Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts, and then the week before that they did Taxi Driver, but they've been doing it since 2017. So I don't know if you're ever looking for podcasts to listen to, but that's what I would definitely recommend. But the last thing that I'm going to ask you is, what's the most recent thing that you've seen? Not necessarily a rewatchable, but maybe the most recent kind of new thing that you've seen that like really had an impact on you. It could be a movie, TV show, anything really.
The most recent new thing that I've seen. The only thing that comes to, I know I've seen like more recent stuff that I've dug since, but I saw the trial of the Chicago 7 on Netflix like a couple months after it got released. and I loved it. You know, I had no idea about most of that stuff, about any of that stuff, and it's just like I thought it was a really well executed movie. The way, like, anytime like a movie frames like injustice in such a poignant way, it just gets me like so amped. And obviously, you know, it's Sorkin, so like, you know, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
But like, it's like, you know, it's definitely more like Social Network good than Molly's Game good. You know what I mean?
Wow,
Like,
that's funny because I like both those movies more than
Oh,
it. But
I mean, I like them both, but like Molly's Game, I thought was like fine. Like,
oh,
you
that's
know,
so
I
interesting.
thought Social Network was unreal. I thought
yeah.
Molly's Game was fine. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Man, that's so fascinating.
no, I
just
mean-
the whole Molly's Game of it, because I know that obviously I was like the only person that saw that when that movie came out in theaters when it did. I swear I was the only one. Like, nobody else knew that. And then it kind of had, like a lot of other things this past year, I had this like second life when it came out on Netflix, and a lot of people didn't react that well to it. But me, I personally like Molly's Game a lot more than Trial of the Chicago 7. But that's just me. But also, again, it's funny because we actually did a podcast episode 2 nights ago on Judas and the Black Messiah on HBO, which weirdly
You gotta
enough,
watch that.
Yeah,
if you're into like,
Yeah.
because that
On my
movie
list.
has characters that intersect with certain characters and moments in the Chicago 7. So, like, I would definitely recommend watching that if
Yeah.
and when you get a chance. But other than that,
and
dude,
you know,
I mean,
Dom, sorry, yeah, I was also gonna say I would definitely recommend watching Zayed's show, Kim's Convenience.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Season 5 airing now.
Plug.
Dude, we really appreciate you carving out a decent chunk of your time to hang out with us tonight, man. It really does mean a lot. Thank you so much for hanging.
Hey man, thanks for having me. Always fun to talk about TV and movie stuff. I love that. I live and breathe that stuff.
Well,
so.
hey, the good news is that this is literally this is the show where we are literally dedicated to that. So, dude, you are welcome back anytime. So, this is the thing that I say to every single celebrity guest that we have on. Like, please come back. Please come back. We've had Jeff Bryan of Survivor on twice now, and you definitely seem like a kind of guy that's like, yeah, we're definitely gonna have you back on. If not for
man,
like,
let's do it.
yeah, definitely. Like, if you ever have like any like sort of a, like if there's a new movie or a TV show, or just like if
Yeah,
you ever want to like
keep
be
us
on for like a
posted.
certain recap, please keep us
For
posted.
sure,
We'd
man.
love to have you back on. You definitely seem like you know
And-
your shit.
And speaking of being posted, where can people find you? Keep up to date with all things that you do. We obviously know where we can find Kim's Convenience on Netflix in the US, Canada, CBC Gem, or just airing regularly on Netflix 9 months after the season wraps. But you yourself, man, where can people find you and keep up to date with everything?
Yeah, Instagram Ziad.ek and Twitter Ziad_ek.
Perfect. Awesome, man. Thank you again so much. This was an absolute blast, and I'm really looking forward to the new season. It left off in the craziest way, and it's been killing me not knowing what's happening. That's how much I love it. So,
And I
Yeah,
just
it's a
realized
good
I'm gonna be in a slightly better position than Chris, because I'm probably because by the time I'm probably finished with the bulk of the show that's on Netflix, the new season is already gonna be on there. So I'm just gonna be able to
you're
roll
gonna
right
get
into the
spoiled.
new season,
Yeah.
and I'm not even gonna have like any of the feelings that Chris is. So I'm like, a part of me is I'm like, oh no, but on the other hand, I'm like, oh well. So in that case, I'll only I won't have to suffer the way that he is. So
Yeah.
I can't
But
wait
yeah.
for people to get to see it in the US. I love hearing feedback back from friends in the US. It's awesome.
yeah, man. And, speaking of new seasons, Dom, we are kind of working our way through
Yeah,
our...
we are working
what
our way.
season
Yeah,
is it?
we're in our third season of our life overall. Our podcast.
We
life,
got
kind of.
greenlit again,
Yeah,
Ziad.
yeah.
So,
we,
you know,
yeah,
things are
see,
going
that's
good
the
over
beauty
here.
that's the beauty when you are showrunner, producer, content creator, head of development, all that good stuff. Basically pretty much every single position that you see on the TV behind the scenes. That's just the two of us. That's it. There's no one else involved
Call
here.
your shots.
On the of course that is in my mind the only way to really move through life. Of course, here on the Talkin TV network. Guys, thank you once again for tuning into another fantastic episode. Thank you to Zaid for tuning in. This is awesome, and we're definitely going to have you back on for future events. Guys, as you know, we have content that we put out every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Tune in 2 days to see our recap on the latest episode of WandaVision that will be dropping on that day. Episode 7, we've got 3 episodes. We're in the home stretch overall. Make sure you click the subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new to this channel, and click the bell next to the subscribe button. That way you guys can get notified every time we put up new content. Also, make sure you click the like button and leave a comment below. Leave a comment for Zaid. Let us know just, if you have another question for him and you missed the live stream overall tonight. That way, we might not be able to, he might not be able to respond in real time, but we might be able to, send him a message afterwards and just let him know, just be like, hey, this guy had a question, but he missed it. So, yeah, that's definitely what we'll do. Make sure you follow us on all the social medias. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Talkin TV, at Talkin TV Podcast overall. I am, of course, on there at Movie Nerd Reviews. Chris, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, the people can find me anywhere that matters at Christian Ivanko. I'm getting back into the music game, guys. Zaid, I don't know if you know this. You don't. I've worked professionally in the industry. Things have happened. People have let me down. I'm going solo, and I'm working on my new tunes. And I'm very excited to share this with the amazing community we've been building here on YouTube over the past year, and in podcasts for the past 3 years now. That's crazy to say. So I really can't wait to share that part of me with you guys, and really hope you guys enjoy it. I think it's some of my best work. Just going to be confident about it, and I really can't wait for everyone to hear it. And also, if you guys are here because of a Kim's Community hashtag, because the buzz of the new show just dropped in the U.S. and you want to see more, well, hey, we're talking to Sujith Varghese on this channel March 1st. If it hasn't happened yet, you can tune in and catch us chatting with Mr. Mehta, who's an amazing character as well. Or if it's past the time, well, guys, it's already on the channel if it's after March 1st. Check it out. We love the show so much. We're going to try and get as much information and into the eyes and the heads of the creators as we can. So stick with us. We got a lot for you. Again, thank you so much, Zaid, for hanging with us tonight. We really appreciate it. It's been an absolute honor and a blast. And we wish you all the best of the luck with the show and your career.
We're going to make sure that Kim's Convenience becomes the next Community. And I don't know if that's a good
That's
thing.
my
goal.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But hey,
Great
look,
thing.
that 6 seasons in a movie hashtag works wonders in ways that we didn't even know about. And so much so that we even kind of riffed on it for our own little hashtag that we always use to close out the night, which is, of course, 12 seasons in a short film. And, of course, watch more fucking movies and TV. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.